Hi, Don.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. How you doing?
Well, it's a little cold where I am this morning, so you got all that good weather. I can see by the tan on your face.
Oh, we got great weather. Yeah, we got great.
Yeah, I'm cold. I'm overseas right now, so
Oh, are you?
yeah. We took the we're deemed an essential corporation, so we can go places that other people can't go. Uh, so we're back in the sport.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Oh, the wonders of technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miss Delgado sent the stuff over to me, so thank you very much. And I've
Good.
got a very clear picture of you.
Good. Good. Are you
You,
able to turn
you
your
can see
video
me
on?
okay?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, everything is working.
Do you have video? Can you turn your video on?
Oh, I thought I already had it on.
There you go.
Here. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had it on.
Yeah.
Slipping in my age. And we have the other people. I see 5 participants.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good to me.
We had about 30 people register, so we'll give it a few minutes here.
Oh, we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's I tell you what, it's none of it is good news. We got less ships parked outside of LA and Long Beach, thank God.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that part of it's excellent. That took some doing.
Yeah.
Business your way is just booming.
Oh, it's like we've never seen it.
Yeah, I'm happy for you guys. I mean, every time I turn around, it's another $400 million deal or something like that going on.
Yeah.
If we can get the thing in Gila Bend going, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Well, they're a nice client, but we'll see what happens.
What country are you in?
I'm in Singapore right now.
Oh,
This is home for me. I've
yeah.
had a home here for 50 years.
Wow.
So this is, and we have about 150 staff in Singapore.
That's great.
That's out of 8,000 total. So but they're mostly administrative people, and they take care of all the administrative. But our guys in other countries, when they're out on a project, because most of them are remote, they forward everything at the end of their business day to Singapore. Singapore takes that and shakes it down and fills out the project and how the scope of work will work and sends it back.
Wow.
And then so that next morning, the guys that are in the field have got it in front of them already done. And then the next step is to, just the people in Singapore's job is to keep filling that in so there's no time lapse.
Yeah.
It's worked pretty good for the last 50 years. So
Wow. That's great.
yeah, we never, when I left Fritz Companies and retired for a while, went to Tahiti for about 5.5 years. I didn't expect to do another company. Well, I didn't need the money, but my wife wanted to do a company and she had never done one. So we formed it with the 2 of us. Now last year we did 700 million.
Terrific. Terrific.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Got a change happening over at Genesee, Wyoming, by the way. Zachary's leaving.
Oh, really?
This is his last day today.
I'll be darned. That's too bad. He's a great guy.
He is a super guy, a really cool guy. He let me know a few days ago, and his replacement is Ryan, who's been there all along. But and I don't know yet. He can't yet tell me where he's going because he has to leave today and after that. But it's in the same field.
Good. Good. Well, let's get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We've got a great session today with a gentleman named Don Breazeale. Don has over 50 years experience in the logistics arena, and he is a supply chain expert by virtue of that. He has lived and traveled all over the world and has extensive experience all over the world. And he is one of the foremost experts on logistics. And so with all that's going on in the world today, I thought it was very timely to talk with Don and get his insights on what some of the issues are affecting the supply chain, what some of the root causes are, where did this all start, and what some of the effects may be. So, Don, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you shed some light on how this all started? It feels like it started with the advent of COVID. I don't know.
I think it actually doesn't have too much to do with COVID, except it became a great interrupter and it sort of exacerbated everything that was going on. We in the logistics business, we've been facing this for a long time, and everybody that's on the call will probably know that this is the absolute truth. Congestion is the thing we fear the most, because what happens is it begins backing up, and we're reliant. And unfortunately, a lot of the material that's coming out to where you might view it and see it is mistakenly, I believe, not going after the root cause, which is to look at the whole logistics schematic and say, from front to end, what do we have to do to make this come together? I'll just jump into one little part of this. The railroads are doing a great job. Being Santa Fe and the UP on the western side are doing a superb job. The other railroads on the other side they're really doing fine. But they took the precaution years ago to build enough infrastructure to support the rails. They've got triple and quadruple track. They've done all this type of thing, and they've really watched how they're operating their environment. The ocean carriers, a lot of people are excited about the ocean carriers. I came from the ocean carrier side, from a company called Sealand, Highland to the Golden Dragon. So I was the resident manager in Taiwan and Hong Kong and Shanghai. But when you get down to it, the ocean carriers right now are creating some havoc because they're charging so much money. Now, their ships are doing just fine. The difficulty they have is that when they come into the ports of LA and Long Beach, thanks to all of the importers and exporters and just people, the demand portion that's going on has surged everything. And that's, if you a minute ago said, what is causing the front end of it? We can handle it as it goes along normally, if it's in sort of a normal process with the ocean carrier, because they go by day of the week sailings. They come in, they drop their stuff, and they go back the other way. But what happened with this is everybody started buying on the pandemic side, started buying a lot more material, and therefore we had a congestion point hit us that we had never seen before. This is, in all my years of experience, I've never seen this type of deal. We had 130 vessels sitting outside the ports of LA and Long Beach at anchor, doing nothing. And people now are saying, well, we're doing better because there's only 76 out there right at the moment, and another 40 coming. But what you don't see is that even when those ships have gotten inside the harbor and pulled up to a berth, a lot of them are not being unloaded. And the reason for that is there's no place to put them. They can't get them on the ground. There's no use unloading them because there's no space for them. And the railroads are trying their hardest. You've seen what the Secretary of Transportation came out, and Biden came out and said, well, we're going to try to get them to accelerate to 24/7. Basically, the ports have been working 24/7 for a long time.
So you're talking about the containers. There's no physical room for containers on the ground.
And it also covers the break bulk stuff that's coming in. So ocean carriers is one thing, railroads another. And then one of our biggest problems today is we have close to 40,000 empty seats on the truck area. That means we can't get enough drivers to pass the drug test. And so as a result, on those three huge components, we've got a breakdown in it. So the only way, and for those folks that are listening, is that we need to pay attention to all of the component parts of the logistics system, so that when we do them, we sort of like a jigsaw puzzle, fit them together and they work. What's happened is that The ocean carriers have seen an opportunity and said, oh, an average container from Shanghai to Los Angeles just about a year ago was coming in at $1,500. That container is now at $6,500 to $7,000, and a couple of cases not too long ago at $20,000 a container for a 40-foot container. That the trucking side has accelerated about 9%. The railroad side has gone about, normally the railroads go up 4% per year. Right now they went up about 6.3 to 6.7%. So what we see, and this is the quandary we have, it's a bit of a conundrum, is that we need to look at all the parts. And unfortunately, what's happening a lot, if you read the newspapers and you read the reports on stuff, we're angry at the ocean carrier because he's making the rates go up. Well, he's not making the rates go up. He's taking advantage of the situation, and he's an opportunist. And what he's doing is get a surge, so he's going to take advantage of it. Pause for a moment on ocean carriers. Remember, we've got ocean carriers right now that are building vessels that have 24,000 containers on board. To show you just how old I am, when I joined the business back in '68, the biggest ship we had 984 containers on. That was it. Evergreen Lines dropped a big one about a month and a half ago at 24,000 containers.
Wow.
And it's building 5 more behind that. And all the other carriers are trying to pick up with that. Keeping in mind, by the way, as an aside, those big ships can only go in certain ports around the world. What was called post-pandemic ships could only go to about 5 or 6 ports in the world because the water wasn't deep enough. But let's go back to the real issue that all of us ought to be considering, because we're getting hit hard at local areas. I mean, I don't go to Walmart very often, but I walked in a Walmart the other day and there were rows and rows of shelves empty. I went into a Rite Aid and there 6 rows in a row in the shop were empty. That's a result of what you and I are seeing. You know, a tight capacity and a high demand hitting the ground. So if we're going to fix it at all, and I encourage all of you, and when you're talking to your clients and your importers and exporters, and you're a state that's surging anyway, is that you need to start talking about what the beginning and the end of this is, because the only way we're going to fix it, and I'll jump ahead to one little piece here, because somebody's going to ask me sooner or later, or think it at least. This isn't going to get fixed in 2023 or 2024. This is going to take longer than that to get it really back on the road it should be on. So we need to encourage those people who are both shippers and receivers and people who are in the industry and so on like that. We need to have them start considering and talking to their logistics providers. How do we do this? And how can we help you get it done? Instead of just saying, well, we want more space, or we want this. A big complaint right now is we can't get any space on ships. Well, you can if you know enough people, you can get that done. I represent 1 million containers a year. So if I go and negotiate, you're going to listen to what I say. All right. So I can get them from my clients. And I represent, therefore, because of the down to truck and so on like that. We need to be doing that with everyone, even if we have a small client or a big client, talking about them to talk to their providers and say, how do we help you? Instead of the usual way, which is they're trying to get better rates, they're trying to do this or that. You need to turn it around and say, okay, how are we going to fix this together? Because if we don't fix it together, we're not going to get it done. And that's a tragedy, because people are just reading the news or reading this, or they're upset because they can't get space or what's happening. We need to join the crowd to sit down and start trying to figure out, how do we do this from Asia to Chicago or Milwaukee or Arizona or wherever it's going to be. And you're a pivotal state, by the way.
And do you see, what is that fix in your mind? Is that more truck drivers, greater capacity at the ports to offload the containers?
No, the ports have enough capacity at the port. And you got a troublesome spot. Let's take the Port of LA. Unless you wipe out San Pedro, and that's been discussed, unless you wipe out San Pedro, you don't have any space for it to go to, and you can't go further out in the ocean because the environmentalists will eat you alive. All right,
Right.
you're pretty well trapped. Long Beach is a little smaller port than LA. But let's think of something just on those two ports. About 4 years ago, 5 years ago, those two ports combined were the fifth largest port in the world. Today, they're number 9. The other ports that have jumped ahead of them in terms of size and the ability to handle freight loads in a quicker way are all foreign places that have done it. They've moved ahead. They had the space, or they did whatever it is, or they took the idea of how to rearrange the port. And now that could be done. You couldn't expand the port much, but you could rearrange it to some degree. We've asked for a long time the question of why don't we make that a regional port, LA and Long Beach together? Combine the services. One handles a certain type of product, and the other handles the other. The unfortunate part is they're both handled by two different cities. And while they have a joint powers authority between them so they can talk about stuff, they're not, the two cities don't want to ever join into that. They don't want to do that thing. Think on that one. If we could get them to make that, this for those West Coast ports, and I'll talk to you about Seattle if you want, but Seattle's a disaster. Portland is doing pretty good, but they're a small port. LA and Long Beach are the big guys that, they handle about 55% of the entire revenue producing material that comes into the United States. So we need to think about how do we address each of those segments. And I know that's a mouthful for everybody, but the truth of it is it's the only way we're going to get it fixed.
So there's a bottleneck there because they don't have enough ground capacity to offload these containers. Then you got a bottleneck with the trucks because we're 40,000 drivers short. And then you throw in this COVID situation, like you say, which was an interrupter to this finely tuned process. And we're still recovering, trying to get back in cadence. Is that the essence of it?
That's a good excellent summation of it. The railroads have done the best job of all. I mean, they're really doing pretty darn good. But let's think about something about railroads, and this brings your state into play. The railroads built a great infrastructure, quadruple, triple train, all the way track, all the way across. Great terminals everywhere. They've done some really remarkable things. I'm very proud of being Santa Fe and of the UP both. We've worked for both of those firms for a long time. But what we have to think about is this: how do we take? Now, here's something for your state. How do we take and build a short line rail line out of the ports of LA and Long Beach, and use that short line to move freight to Arizona, take it off, because you have space where we could put it for a while, and then reload it onto what are called hook and haul with the rail lines, the major rail lines, and then we could relieve this whole thing. To be honest with you, we're going to be suggesting this to the ports of LA and Long Beach very shortly. We're putting up a document on this that says, how about if we use Genesee, Wyoming, which is right there in your state? You and I just talked about Zachary leaving. How about if we use Genesee, Wyoming, who is they're not a class 1 carrier. They're an $8 billion short line. All right. And they've got them all over the place. They know their business. They're excellent. How about if we use them to take this stuff off our piers in LA and Long Beach 24/7 and moved it to Arizona and then reload it? We could stagger it and we could take this stuff that's staggering us in LA and Long Beach and move it off of there.
Well, why can't the class 1s do that if they've got ample capacity?
Very simple. They don't want to. They want to start the train in LA and run it 2,800 miles toward the east and drop it off and pick it up and bring it back. They make more money that way. God bless their little greedy souls. And they're wonderful people to work with. But railroads, class 1 railroads, are designed to go long distances and to just keep the momentum. You're talking about just the being Santa Fe has 126 trains a day leaving the West Coast going east. UP's got a little more than that. All right.
Mm.
So they don't want to stop them, slow them down, do anything. But this is why, if you wanted to make a lot of money about the last 10 years, you should become a short line operator, because the BN Santa Fe would give you the rail, give you the locomotives, give you the freight that's moving in that sector, and let you load off onto their trains and take away. So right now, what if we created a major short line railroad that would run from port, it's never been done before, moving from ports of LA and Long Beach, and decongest those two ports into a short line and move them over to Arizona into an intermodal. And you've got a great one that'd be in Santa Fe and Phoenix, pretty darn good. Maybe a little bit outside of town where the land would be cheaper, and put one up and turn around, offload, and then reload under a hook and haul with the line haul player will come along and pick up something if you've got it ready for him. So you have a train load yourself, he'll come and get the train load. But he doesn't want to stop for some little itty bitty piece along the way. He wants to have that thing prepared for him. So in terms of solution making, we're going to promote this idea towards the ports of LA and Long Beach and to the United States government, and see what we can make out of it, because your state, in my mind, the dynamics in your state are just excellent. Everybody's going to love the idea of having, as long as we keep the trains out of your industrial sites, they're going to have the ability to move more. All those people that are moving into your deal are going to want transportation. The other thing is that you've got space. I mean, you've got, forgive it, sort of inexpensive property compared to California and other places. So why don't we engineer something that's going to help fix this solution, instead of just staring at it and saying, well, what do we do next? But
so
first
to that end,
everybody has to be talking about the whole system.
To that end, a question here is, does Genesee and Wyoming have the lift facilities to run the intermodal trains to Arizona?
Absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely. Remember, Genesee, Wyoming was number 2 to get the entire British rail system. They lost because the guys they gave it to were some Brits, but Genesee, Wyoming bid on it, and they were that big they could have taken over the entire rail system in the UK.
No kidding. Wow.
And they're in New Zealand, they're in Australia, they're in other places in their property. And Mike Miller, who's the CEO and chairman of the board of the company, is a very innovative kind of a guy. We're in discussions with him about how to make some of this work, because we think they're such a powerhouse. It's small, $8 billion is not a lot of money, but that's what they are. And it's all devoted to what we call short line or class 3 railroads. And the big guys are huge, of course, being Santa Fe, the rest of them, but they fit in perfectly. And here's the problem. The ports of LA and Long Beach won't let them in. And they've not allowed Genesee, Wyoming to come into the ports. They blocked them.
How come?
They have too much rail in their minds. The BN Santa Fe and the UP are there. The ports built the major gateway, is the best way to put it, major gateway for them, an underground rail that runs 13 miles out of the ports of LA and Long Beach and takes it out of town. It's a genius piece. And they've built infrastructure and worked with the railroads to do it. So they've got that done really well. And they don't want to have somebody else, hold on a second, let me get rid of this. They don't want to have somebody else coming into that mix and causing a problem with it. So they blocked them out, but there's a way in. And I'm not going to tell you what that is because it's confidential at this point. So we've built a piece around it that, because of our relationship with both the ports and the ocean carriers, we have a way to make that happen. And we're talking with Genesee, Wyoming to see how we can help them with that. So and help the state of Arizona.
So we've got the rail situation, that there's a solution in theory there. What do we do about this trucker shortage?
Well, the best thing you can do is get with your state senators and the rest of them and get them to encourage the trucking lines to engage more in how they control the drug issue. And I think part of it is, and the truck lines, by the way, are doing this. Some of the big guys, Swift and some of these big guys, they're actually educating people and looking for people who are not doing drugs or not working in that environment and trying to bring them out. That's a tough one to do.
Yeah.
But if you get your state senators and the other people involved in this, and your state groups that have sway over this type of thing, and the lady that runs your department certainly has the wherewithal to get that done. Turning around, they should be encouraging them to set up protocols for drug surveillance and other things to make that happen. That's a long, tedious process and not something I'm expert on at all. But I think just naturally we need to have it done.
We've got a company in Tucson called Too Simple. You familiar with them?
No, I'm not.
They are pioneering, I'll call it driverless trucks, automated.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So perhaps that's a piece of the solution.
Are they being successful at it?
I think so. I think so.
Well, that would be wonderful, because I tell you what, you and I both know, and anybody that's listening in here, it's hard to overcome this drug thing.
Yes.
I mean,
I think
by the way,
across all
just to
sectors.
give you an idea, we've been battling this shortage of drivers for at least the last 10 years. 10 years.
Wow.
Which means that we only get part of what we could be doing. Because I mean, 40,000 empty seats is a lot of seats.
Yeah, it sure is, and you've got more people retiring and so forth all the time.
Absolutely.
How about fuel prices? They certainly have to be having an impact on all.
Oh Lord, yeah. Well, of course, you and I both know, and everybody that's listening in right now, you just go to your local pump. I don't know what it is in Arizona right now. We're now paying roughly $5.50 a gallon.
Yeah, we're $4.59 for unleaded, $5 for diesel.
And don't, God forbid, don't go to Canada. My wife and I were in Vancouver about a week and a half ago, and it was $6.50 a gallon.
Wow.
That's what it came down to.
And so the shipping lines have to feel that too, right? The freight lines, the ocean
everybody, we're looking at, in the terms of truck, rail, and warehouse alone, at least a 23% increase across the board, both domestic and international rates.
Do you think that's directly attributed to the fuel situation?
It is a huge part of it, but there's another part to it, as you already thought ahead of me, I'm sure. Labor's gone up big time. They're having trouble getting in. When they get them, they have to pay. I mean, right now, don't laugh. In the logistics business, I just added 500 more people. The price of the logistics person going out into this market right now, and this would fall over to anybody else. Right now, the guys at a certain skill set that are, say, senior management level in the logistics business have gone from like 250 grand a year to 500,000.
Wow.
500,000, a jump like that. So when we're looking at it, we're looking at fuel prices going up, or overall pricing for truck, rail, and everything else. And I'm giving you a composite, about 23% compounded off of an increase in 2021. All right. So we're looking at a minimum side of around 8 or 9% in certain markets, but fuel is galloping up very fast and we're not going to get any relief. Let's face it, it's going to get worse. So we're estimating right now that this 23% is light. We think it's going to be more like about 50%. Across the board. We're tracking all types of transportation issues. We don't do people transportation.
Right.
We're only using the stuff that's moving freight.
What is your take on Mexico? We do a lot of things with Mexico here in Arizona. Do you think that they have a role to play in this logistics arena?
Well, Mexico is near and dear to our heart. I've had a home down there for 40 years. And the rail system is very good. And our railroads, Kansas City Southern, and a number of our railroads along that line have gone down into Mexico and actually created joint ventures with Ferromex and the people that are doing like that. Mexico is alive and well, except on the drug and gang issue has heightened itself. I used to let my kids walk from the center of the city we were living in down to go watch the highlight matches, and it'd be they were 8, 9 years old, and it'd be 9 o'clock at night, and you could walk the streets. You're not doing it anymore. Mexico, let's flip it to the other side. 6 of the major ports in Mexico are owned by a guy in Hong Kong.
Really?
6 of the major ports. And he controls it. Now, you probably heard this because Yuma had put this up. He was going to put in Punta Colonet.
Yes.
We were hired to go down and look at it. And at that time, it was under the jurisdiction of Ensenada. The guy in Ensenada was a cool guy. They pulled it away from him and put it into the national port system. That killed it a lot because it ran into politics. Punta Colonet is a natural harbor. It's absolutely stunning. And what exists there right now is a gas station and a couple of, maybe there's 150 houses and a couple other minor things. And some things have probably been added, and some great surfing. And Punta Colonet was ideal, but then it hit the political blocks in Mexico. And the guys in Yuma right now are trying to reconnect it. But the cost of putting in Punta Colonet and then a rail system across the isthmus there over to the other side, and then bring it up to Yuma, roughly $2 billion, which is not a lot of money if you collectively put it together. But it's still, you still got to build it, and it's going to take some time to do that. And the rail is one of the biggest things. Now, when we were involved, we went to BN Santa Fe and the UP and got them to agree to pay for the rail, which would have cut about $1 billion. All right. And the guy in Hong Kong was a real good friend of ours, and he still wanted to do the deal. It was going to cost him $1 billion or $2 billion. Chump change to him. He's the 5th richest man in Asia. He died. His son doesn't want to do it. All right. He's content to make his money off the other 6 ports and to do all the things he has. They're the largest terminal operator in Hong Kong and one of the largest in China. If I were sitting in your boots, because Guaymas and those places are perfect for Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd be getting on an airplane and going and talking to the guy in Hong Kong, and I'd be talking to also to Genesee, Wyoming, and saying, how do we make this all work? Because it is also affixed to this solution we were looking for that we came together to talk about today. That could be a big boost. The other ports are doing very well in Mexico. Guaymas needs to be brought up, but the other ports that are there that funnel up to you, Ferromex is doing a pretty darn good job with the rail, and they're open to ideas. And I'd be spending, if I was in Arizona, I'd be spending more time with them or talking to them. And as a logistics company, we're talking to them because we see them as part of the fix. But it's going to take some time to get that put together. Shouldn't take much time, by the way. And I think the fact that you brought it up, I would love to see more activity out of Arizona trying to bring that together, because it would relieve the pressure on the West Coast ports. It would bring it down into, and by the way, as you probably know already, when all this wheel went up where we had 130 boats sitting 150 miles offshore, most of them had gone down into Mexico and were putting their ships there in hopes of getting on into one of the ports of Mexico and moving the freight up that way. It's a natural move, all right?
Right.
Which would be beneficial for the state of Arizona. So I think they're part of the solution. And, you know, the issue of crime and some other things, I'm being careful here, but the issue they have, and I love Mexico, but the issues that we have with that is something we could overcome or at least work on. And it'd be worth it to be able to get those ports very, very active in dealing with us in the United States. I happen to love Mexico. I think it's a great place to do business. So I would encourage all of you to do that. And if anybody wants to chat with us individually on it, we would be happy to chat with them. And we have some things we can't reveal because there's an NDA in place for us. But that your state, I think, holds one of the big solutions to this whole conundrum.
Very
I mean,
interesting.
I'm flattering you because it's the truth.
Right.
California, I said I sat on the board of Caltrans for 10 years. I know what California's like.
Yeah.
I mean, it was wonderful to be one of the richest states in the world and all that kind of good stuff. But the truth of the matter is we have a conundrum. We have a problem. We have too much of everything. And this shows it. If we can move this stuff off the piers in LA and Long Beach and move it off to a more neutral zone like yours, where you have abundance of land and you're doing some really remarkable things, we could alleviate the pressure on that, and that would change the dynamic remarkably, because
Yeah.
that brings in ocean carrier, truck, and rail all in one deal. You still have to isolate the problem of truck, and how do we get people that can pass the drug test and have to fill out the 40,000 seats. But that's probably doable in the long haul.
Gotcha.
But the mix for us right now is we need to think about the whole zone, front end to back end of what logistics is really about. And I sent you that document on an overview of logistics. You're welcome to share that. I think I wrote that 10 years ago, and the predictions that we put in it have all come true. A lot of them I didn't want to come true.
Understood. Another question we have is, do you see the pending merger of CP and KCS as improving the movement of intermodal trains?
Absolutely. KCS I never thought KCS would be as smart as it is.
And for everybody listening, who is KCS?
Kansas City Southern.
Okay. And
they're an old railroad that's been around. They've been in classroom they made a very strategic move about 15 years ago that got them into Mexico, and it got them into other places where people said you couldn't go. Mike Haverty, who was the guy that was in charge of that at the time when those acquisitions went down, stepped into that space and made it better. Ever since then, Kansas City Southern has been fooling everybody and doing better and better for itself because it's made good acquisitions and it has a marvelous kind of relationship with Ferromax. I mean, I would go with them just for that.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, they're a big player that's going to work well. The intermodal system will give them more infrastructure, which is something they're shy on in terms of the relationship to a BN Santa Fe or UP. But yeah, it'll add more to it. And the good news is that Kansas City Southern is a solid railroad. They didn't used to be, but Mike Haverty kind of, God rest his soul, he died just a few years ago. But Michael was an operating guy, a real railroader. When he went in, he fixed Kansas City Southern and made it good. So any merger in there, anything that's only good, all good stuff.
So we've talked a lot about freight coming from the California ports towards Arizona. How about from the travel of goods from eastern ports to Arizona? How do you see that? For instance, lumber. We're going through just a huge housing boom right now, and
you're short of lumber.
We're short of lumber, and it all has to come from the Southeast and Texas or Canada.
The quandary there is that the railroads, it used to be that the railroads, when they traveled from east to west, were short. They wanted anything they could get. That's not the case anymore. Now they've got a lot of freight. They can fill it out with stuff they want. And remember, the carriers are always going to want a high grade. The big deals are garments and electronics and toys and shoes, that kind of stuff. If they can get that, they're not going to carry lumber. So the thing to do with them, I think, is very simple. Each one of these has a regional office, and railroads really like to talk to senators and congressmen and people like that. They're charmed by that because they always feel like they've been way back in the beginning is great. Then they've got sort of shunted aside. And if you can bring a senator or congressman to the table, he's likely to get what you'll want. The is it Sandra, who's your president?
Yeah, Sandra
Sandra, I have
Watson.
not met her. I've only seen her name and looked up her profile. I would get somebody like Sandra to sit down with those guys and sit and maybe have somebody at the table that speaks railroad language and sit down and talk to have the senator congressman there, have Sandra there and you there, and then sit down and talk to the rail guys and say, here's what we have and what we'll trade you to give you. Because watch for the trade. There's an intermodal yard that's needed. Look across at what Utah is doing. Utah is playing the genius game right now. They built intermodal in the hopes of bringing more shale. Shale fell. Utah switched the whole thing, kept the intermodal yards, and now is in boomtown. The same thing can happen in your state or any state. You'll have to look at maybe an infrastructure, but you've got enough infrastructure you can switch some of it around and work with it. The key is approaching the rail people in the right way and charming them in the idea that, okay, we'll do this for you if you do this for us. This is not a novel approach, but this is the way it has to be done. Railroads are very susceptible to that. Somebody like Sandra and yourself and the senator, congressman, to sit down and begin to think about, and I've looked at your state a lot. We've done a lot of work in Flagstaff and Wickenburg and other places like this, so we kind of know your state pretty well. You've got a lot of places where you have empty space.
Oh yeah.
And where the railroad is running right along that empty space. Wickenburg, being Santa Fe, runs right along the edge of Wickenburg.
Yes.
I mean, and right at Wickenburg, 15 miles outside the city, is an ideal place to put an intermodal site. It's empty and it's cheap. And you could put that up and say, I'll take all the lumber here. And the roadways leading up to that site have been improved. I haven't looked at it for about 2 years or 3 years, but it's been improved. You could offer them that. Cost would be low. All right, they'd probably build the intermodal site for you, show you how it's done, and then at that point in the game, you've got it, and then you'll get your lumber. The railroads are easy to approach, and they're easy to entice. They like it. The ocean carriers will tell you to go fiddle.
We've had a good relationship with both the class ones, UP and BNSF.
Yeah.
They've been very cooperative in helping us bring in some of these large companies. And they're looking to make investments here in their infrastructure.
Keep in mind one thing when you're doing it, by the way. There's a distinction between UP and BN Santa Fe that's remarkable. The BN Santa Fe is a marketing company. The UP is a franchise company.
Ooh.
They're a franchise railroad who believes God gave them all this. And the BN Santa Fe believes that you got to go and get it. We had an office in BN Santa Fe's headquarters for 7 years. We kind of know how they tick.
Yeah.
And the UP brought us over to help them they saw what we did with the BN Santa Fe and said, would you come over here and do this for us? But when we got there, we began to realize that, and we were, I guess, dumb. We didn't realize what we were hosting into. You have a franchise railroad who believes that this is their God-given right to have this because they built the rails back in 1800 or whatever it was. And you have BN Santa Fe, who under their leadership that started about when Krebs took over, about 25 years ago, said, let's go get it. And they put together a marketing combine. So when you're talking to the BN Santa Fe, you dangle the marketing side in front of them. UP, you give them the golden key to the city and you treat it differently. And they've been good to you, they'll be better to you. If you remember the technique in it, because that's definitively how the two railroads are made up. And I love it because it allows you to play one off the other. We got the Alameda Corridor built in LA because of that. The Alameda Corridor, you know what it is?
No.
It took a guy named Art Goodwin, dreamed it up. He was the chief engineer for the Port of Los Angeles, and it called for digging a tunnel going down about 2.5, 3 stories into the ground and joining the ports of LA and Long Beach, and on Alameda Street, which is, I was a poor kid. We grew up along Alameda Street, Watts and Compton on one side and Huntington Park and Southgate on the other. And we dug the trench all the way out to about 13 miles underground and put the rail down in the ground.
Yeah, incredible.
Quad triple strike at second. The first surge, and this is old, was 2.9 billion to build it, which was in those days a lot of money, not anymore. Yeah. But it got everything underground, and we put linear parks on top and stuff like that. Being Santa Fe and these guys are really, they like this kind of innovation. And I think that we in California, we overbuilt everything. So you're ripe for the idea. You'll probably do it better than we did. We built so much infrastructure, it almost choked us to death. I mean, we began to see that ideas came up that were startling. I mean, in one case, they wanted to take out an entire freeway system and put nothing but trains. Well, what are you going to do with the people?
Yeah.
And that's everything. So a state like yours that has so much land, and by then we were already clogged up with towns and places like that, that we didn't have as much space. But I'm anxious for Arizona because I'm being selfish, because to me, it's a logistics paradise. It's a place where you can really put something up and make it really, really work. In our days in California, I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm sorry, I'm taking too much of your time.
No, this is wonderful. This is great, great insight. And I would encourage the audience to ask questions while we have Don. Incidentally, Don's calling from his car in Singapore right now. And so we're quite fortunate to be able to get this time with him. So
I'm fortunate to be on the line. So.
Where do you see things going in the logistics industry? Give us a glimpse into the crystal ball.
Well, the logistics business is booming right now. If you want to get really wealthy, go ahead and get in the logistics business, because right now everybody's craving our services or to get behind any parts of the logistics environment, because I mean, just look at what China's doing and what our friends in other countries are doing. In terms of the logistics side of the business, it's Boomsville. I mean, it's just hard not to make money, because the first of all, it has to make more money, because as I demonstrated to you not too long ago, is that guys that were at 250 grand a year are now at 500,000.
They got to pay those guys.
Well, I have 8,000 employees, and I have 30 people that make over $1 million a year. All right, that's not a big deal. I mean, we're a small company, but that's quite a lot of money for anybody.
Right.
All right, but they're worth every dime of it, because they're gonna our payback on it is huge. So in terms of building a logistics quadrant, you're going to get a lot of people wanting to jump on the bandwagon and work with Arizona to build that out. You've already got BN Santa Fe and UP on your side, and you've got some great truckers in your state that will want to work with you on it. But you're gonna, if it were me doing it, I'd be looking across and saying, okay, where can I put this so it's not in the line of sight of residential areas, because you have some beautiful ones. Putting it though out in the more in the open desert side, like the thing at Wickenburg, or someplace like that, and then stepping in and saying, how do we build the right thing to help with the solutions to this issue we have at hand in terms of logistics? It's not a big fix, because I think building an intermodal center, after all, it's just dirt, popping up some fences, putting the right lighting in, putting a rail in the middle of it, and putting a warehouse distribution center on it so that you can do cross dock if you want. That's cheap stuff. That's not expensive infrastructure. And you've got the ideal situation. If you went to California, it costs you a fortune. You could go to Arizona because of the land and land costs, and you'd be, I think, ahead of the game. So from the logistics side, anybody wanting to get in the logistics business, stay out of my way, please. But go off and do it, and you'll be delighted with how much money you can make. In terms of the use of logistics, I want to go back to the same thing I've said here all along, I think, and that is we have to all think about, all of us in different segments of this society we live in, think about how we're going to make this work. And we have to do something. And I'll be happy to send you some more information on it, but you can use that one on the deal is how do we meld all these integral parts and make them work together? It's not, it doesn't take a lot of brain power. What it takes a lot of will to sit down at the table and get people like Marissa Walker and others who have done. Marissa's a gem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know she's not in the state anymore, but she's a sweetheart who's easy to work with, and she understands intermodalism.
For sure.
When she was in the governor's office, she was already championing that Canamex thing that she was working on. These other people like that are genuinely perfect.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be able to bring not only the dynamic of what the politics are, which is always a hindrance to us logistics people because we're lousy at politics. But Marissa brings that and the other side of intermodalism and the knowledge of how trade moves back and forth. And you have probably dozens of people like that in your grouping. But that's what you need. And then bring that to the table with the senators and the rest of them. And you've got a winner because, first of all, from a logistics standpoint, if you put up an operation like that, it's chump change to you guys probably, but the state's going to make a lot of money just doing the logistics.
Yeah, and that Canamex corridor, which we now call it I-11, is still moving forward. It still needs to be funded through the feds, but all the studies have been done, and I think the route is pretty well established. But
why don't they put a RIF loan up and build the rest of it?
Well, they should. They should. I just don't know that anybody's taken ownership enough of it to
you know what a RIF loan is, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
If you went with my idea, which is probably your idea already anyway, when you do the intermodal site, you qualify for RIF.
Yep.
So when you put that up, you join the two together and then watch how fast the turnaround. Remember, under the regs, the turnaround time on a RIF loan is 90 days. Once you put it into them, they have to give you a decision in 90 days and cash. So if you put this up, and senators, these guys are going to love that because it's hard to find that kind of money. And it's what's the government deal? 3.2% right now.
Yeah, something like
that.
So
if you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to build this intermodal site for UB in Santa Fe or UP. And by the way, we'll also build the buildings around it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll put up that infrastructure and we'll use a RIF loan to do it and get them to co-sign with a hold harmless. So they're not held for the whole thing. It's a hold harmless deal. They don't have to pay the loan. They're just on the deal to support it. Yep. And then you're going to have yourself an intermodal center.
Well, good. Well, Don, you've been very gracious with your time and your thoughts. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I don't see any other questions from the attendees, but I did learn a new phrase called intermodalism, which we might have to make into some kind of new religion. So thank you very much. I wish you safe travels, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll be back in country. We're going to make a stop in Japan, and then we're going to come back in. I've got to go to Africa for a week or something like that, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, we're always available at any time of the day, and just let us know when you want to chat.
Thank you much, and thank you everybody for being so attentive.
More than a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.